Hi, this is Building Behavior video series, and my name is Emily Hilker. I am the behavior specialist. Today we are talking about planned ignoring. So this is a response to inappropriate behavior that you may have tried before, but we're going to go through the procedures of how this should be implemented so that we can make sure that it's an effective strategy in our classrooms. So what's planned ignoring? This just simply means that we've identified a behavior, that the function of the behavior or the why behind why the student is doing the behavior is to get attention. To know for sure, we would typically do an FBA or a functional behavior assessment to determine that the student is performing this behavior to get attention. But oftentimes you can kind of see that pattern within your classroom. So once you've established that behavior, then you're going to decide that when you see that behavior, you're going to ignore it. Now, that does not mean we ignore the child. We ignore a very specific behavior that we have identified. The whole point of this is that we're teaching the student how to get attention the correct way and how they won't get attention for some of these behaviors that we have noted are inappropriate or unexpected. The key here, the part that most people miss, is that planned ignoring only works if you reinforce a replacement behavior. So it's pretty easy to identify a behavior that we want to get rid of that the student is doing often and it's disruptive. Maybe they're yelling out, maybe they're swearing, and it draws attention. Well, we want to get rid of that, so maybe we want to implement planned ignoring. But in order for that to be successful, we need to use positive reinforcement to increase an appropriate behavior, a way for them to still get attention, but the appropriate way. So you have to do both. For planned ignoring to work, the key is you ignore that inappropriate behavior, and at the same time, you reinforce a replacement behavior that still gets them that attention that they're looking for. Now, some things we need to be careful of. All staff members have to be on board. Anyone working with this student needs to be on the same page. Planned ignoring will not work if the student is able to identify the one staff member to go to get attention for that inappropriate behavior. So it really has to be a united effort. If you can't ignore a behavior completely, then you want to reduce the amount of attention that it's getting in the most dramatic way that you can. And maybe there are times that you're going to have to correct and address a behavior, and you can't completely ignore the student when they show that behavior. You really need to think about how you could reduce the magnitude of the response. And maybe that's by reducing the peers responding to it, reducing how many adults respond to it, or even just the way you respond. Maybe you don't respond verbally anymore, you give a look or a gesture. Kind of like what I was just saying on the last slide, you need to teach your other students how to respond. And it's okay to have a conversation with all your students that sometimes other kids are going to do things that are unexpected, are inappropriate, are not what we want to see in the classroom. And as the teacher, you are going to work to help that student fix that behavior. It is not their job. And what they can do to help is to keep working, to ignore it, and to keep doing their job. Now, there are going to be behaviors that students should try to help, and they should get a teacher to support them. And you want to have those conversations. When would be an okay time for you to help your friend? When would be an okay time to come to me and say that, you need help because something's happening? And when is an okay time just to keep working and ignore what's going on around you? But the students really need to know the response you're looking for, because any kind of attention for inappropriate behavior keeps that behavior going. Even if you as the teacher are not the one responding and if their friends laughing at them, that will keep that inappropriate behavior going and going and going. So you really need to address how everyone is responding to it. Okay, so when a behavior produces attention and we start to ignore it, we turn off the attention that it's going to get, there is often an increase in that behavior. So I want to give you some scenarios to make you think this through. If you're on an elevator and you hit the button and it's not working, it's not lighting up, nothing's happening, you start to hit it more, right? You press it again and again, you double check, you might punch it a little bit faster. You don't just stop trying. And that's the same thing for our students. If yelling out got the student attention and suddenly when they yell out, they're not getting attention, they're going to likely yell out more to try to get that attention again. So you need to hold firm. You need to hold strong and consistent and not provide attention, because then that behavior will drop off. Another great example is a vending machine. You put your money in a vending machine, you hit your little code to get the food that you want, and it's stuck, right? You don't just walk away like, oh, it didn't work. Usually that works. So what do? You might shake the machine. You might kick the machine. You might shimmy it a little bit or hit it with your hip. You're going to try extra things. You're going to try harder to get that food to come out of there, because typically it works. Same thing with student behavior. Eventually, if the food doesn't come out, you walk away, right? You're like, oh, okay, fine, it didn't work. And that's what your student's going to do as well. But you do have to remain consistent and kind of hold tough through that slight increase that you're likely going to see. We cannot use planned ignoring when the behavior is a safety risk. So if the student is throwing things, if the student is hitting themselves, if the student is running from the classroom, these are not things that we can ignore because they're a safety risk. So planned ignoring does not work for every behavior. It needs to be something that is planned for and is thought through. I would be happy to support you if you want to try planned ignoring, to talk through the behavior to make sure it would be an appropriate one to use it with. But again, you go back to, is the student doing this behavior to get attention? And if it's not a risky or a safety concern, then it would be okay to attempt planned ignoring for that behavior. So the big goal when you are using planned ignoring, you do want to decrease that behavior that you're ignoring. You want to see that swearing go down. But like I said at the beginning, more importantly, you want to see a replacement behavior go up. So you have to have both in place. If you only ignore a behavior, you are not going to see a huge decrease in that behavior, because that is the one way the student knows to get attention and that it's been working for them. And if you're not going to allow them to get attention in a more positive, appropriate way, then they're going to keep pulling out inappropriate ways to get your attention. And they may even try more disruptive or maybe turn to unsafe ways to do that. So you have to pair them both. You have to ignore the inappropriate while you're also reinforcing a behavior that is still going to get them attention. And oftentimes, that's raising your hand, right? That's sitting quietly so I know to come over to you. Maybe you make up a cue. Maybe that's teaching them to say, excuse me. Whatever behavior you're accepting, that's fine. But you need to teach that, and then you need to make sure they get reinforcement and attention for that. This kind of just sums it up in another way. You need to pay special attention to positive behaviors while you are ignoring those unpleasant behaviors. You cannot get trapped in the arguments of correcting a student and telling them all the things they're doing wrong or what you don't like. We want to give attention and interact with kids when they're doing the right thing. And we can say, I really like how you did this. That's when they should be getting our attention. And on the other side, we're ignoring when we see that inappropriate. Some teachers have found successful to hang up a sign on their classroom door if they are using planned ignoring. And this might just be a very simple stop sign that whoever's entering your classroom needs to check with you first. Because a lot of times when you walk into a classroom, if you hear swearing, you might turn and look surprised, like, oh, that's not appropriate. You might even give the teacher a look, right? Well, that's providing attention. So if you are using planned ignoring in your classroom and you want to make sure whoever is entering your room is not going to provide attention, you may want to hang a sign on your door. Do not put a student's name. Do not specify all the information of what you're working on. A simple sign like this that just says, hey, planned ignoring, please talk to me first, so that whoever is walking in is not going to sabotage your plan. Finally, this is just a little picture for you to remind you, stay calm. Oftentimes it's easy to get worked up in the moment. You feel like you're doing something wrong by not responding to this inappropriate behavior, but your plan is to ignore and to provide attention when you see the appropriate behavior. You have a plan. This plan is found to be very effective when it's used correctly. And ultimately, you're not letting the student get away with things. They are looking for your attention. So by you not providing attention when you see that inappropriate behavior, you are teaching them the skills that this is not how we get attention in the school setting. You need to be raising your hand, sitting quietly, asking for help, saying, excuse me. Those types of appropriate ways to gain attention from others are what we're teaching them and what we're showing them. So please don't walk away feeling like, oh, I can't do planned ignoring because, that just means the kid can do whatever they want. Ultimately, that's not what's going to happen. By doing this the appropriate way, by you really implementing this with both sides, the ignoring and the reinforcing, you are teaching them the skill of how to access attention the appropriate way. If you have any questions about planned ignoring, I am happy to meet with you. We can meet in person. We can meet virtually. I can come into your classroom and model this. Just let me know. I'm always available, and you can email me at ehilker@aurora-schools.org. Thanks.